Hey, 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 everyone. How are you
Hello.
guys doing? Hi, Una.
Hi.
Welcome, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Very good. All right. Yeah, so in this case, we usually say another month, another challenge, but in this case, it was a little bit different. So this month, we actually had a challenge that was throughout two months. So you had a little bit more time to prepare, to make adjustments to your reports, and essentially try to make as good of a version of report that you can currently create. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the final version. There's always something that you can improve upon, right? And trust me from experience, the final version is never the final. You kind of feel when developing a report like a little bit like a student that has to submit an essay, and final, 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 definitely for sure, ready for printing version two, and so forth, right? So all I'm saying is don't be afraid to play around with your reports. If you feel that something doesn't work out, if you feel that you want to modify something, or if you get a little bit of feedback from our team as well, don't be afraid to spend a little bit more time and try to make the reports better, right? At the end of the day, the whole idea about these challenges and the environment that we're trying to create is this is a place where you can play around with things freely, right? You can try out new things, you can try to learn new skills, see what other people are doing, and try to create the best version of the report that you can. That's the whole idea. But what the webinar is all about. So for those of you who have been here before, you already know how it's going to go. For those of you who are new, just a quick recap. Every single month or every single challenge, we have two different webinars. We have one workshop where we go through the data set, we talk about certain visuals that might work for the report, some tips and tricks regarding the data set, and so forth. And then there's a second one. This is the second one of the series. And the second webinar is all about announcing the top five reports for the challenge, going through them, giving our personal feedback on certain things that we think have been executed very well, some things that we might disagree with. But at the end of the day, the main point is don't take every single comment as basically a rule written in stone, right? Take this as basically just a comment to always remember when building reports and take that into consideration, because the requirements and the final customer approvals are going to be changing. Different audiences cater to different requirements, different reports, different styles, and so forth. So there's a lot of things that you need to take into account when you're building a report. But the whole idea is to give you more insight on how we're going through these reports and how our thought process is, or what are the things that we notice and these sort of things. And of course, the main thing about this is announcing the winner. So announcing the report that, based on the judge's valuation, has received the prize. And of course, throughout the session, if you have any questions, comments, or anything, feel free to leave them in the comments. The Q&A is usually left for the end of the webinar, just so we can kind of go through everything and then answer the questions. But if there's something that we can kind of grab along, we can always answer them during the webinar as well. If you don't feel comfortable with asking questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to our amazing team. I think we have two emails now, right, Alexander? We have webinars at Zoom Charts and we have community at Zoom Charts. So two different ways, yeah, two different ways on how you can reach the our team, ask questions, comments, or anything that you want to, kind of let us know. Because at the end of the day, the more feedback we get from you guys, the more communication we get, the better we can make these challenges for you. That's the whole idea. Because trust me, making a challenge just because we want to make a challenge, I personally don't want to do that. Probably most of the team doesn't want to do that. So we want to make sure that these challenges are actually giving you some sort of a added value at the end of the day. So that is the main idea about this whole thing. But yeah, for those of you who have been here before, quick intro. My name is Alex Paulos. I'm a senior product expert here at Zoom Charts. I'm responsible for trainings, playing around with visuals, breaking them constantly because, why not? I have the pleasure to do it. So, and just trying to understand what are the requirements from the customer's perspective, describing different features, building reports for customers, and so forth. And I'm not alone today, right? I like to blabber a lot. That's fine. But I'm not alone today, so I'm gonna have a colleague of mine join me, and that's Una. Una, a
Hey
quick
everyone.
intro.
Yeah, and I'm a product manager here at Zoom Chats. I work very closely with Ives and basically do very similar things. Maybe not just at that technical level. What Ives is doing, I'm more of person who is reaching out to customers, collecting all the requirements, thinking about the roadmap and deciding what's going to be developed in the near future and what's going to be sort of pushed back more to the backlog. But yeah, so I have probably been in touch in, at least with a couple of you over these last years as well.
Yeah,
So good to be here.
absolutely. Good to have you here as well. Because when we started these challenges, we were the ones actually sending out those feedbacks. Right now, we have a bigger team, so we can allocate a little bit of resource to that. So, but yeah, things change, and definitely, I'm happy to have you here, and I hope the rest of you guys also get some additional value from this. Um, okay, I think without further ado, we can actually start to go through the reports. Right? What do you say? Good to go?
Yeah.
All right. Then let's push the screen live, and let's go through the reports. So we have 86 submissions in total. Yeah. If you want to see all of them, they're all available also on the website. And the one thing that I wanted to quickly cover before going into the individual reports is for those of you who are maybe new here, for those who have been here, you know this, but for those of you who are new, since we have these challenges, if you actually go to the challenge page, right here at the bottom, you can actually see the whole archive. So if you're new to these challenges and the first challenge maybe is the next month that you're trying to go through, and this is the first session you're joining us for, and you just don't know how to build reports or what sort of reports are being built or anything like that, you have this full archive. If you open up any one of these, let's say previous challenge for Onyx Data, if we open it up, every single submission and also the winning report is available to you for you to look. So you can open up the report, you can actually interact with it. So that gives you an opportunity to kind of take a closer look and understanding, okay, what type of visuals, what sort of calculations are being used, and so forth. You don't have to copy it, right? That's not a great idea. But it allows you to kind of get a good perspective or idea of how different reports are being built. Additionally, one other thing that I would recommend is if you're new to Zoom charts, you can actually go to also to resources and webinars. And again, same thing. If you scroll down, you can find a full archive of previous webinars. So if you're just starting off, one place that I would probably recommend to visit would be the previous top 5 announcements. Just kind of go through different things, see things that we notice a lot. Because trust me, there are things that we're constantly repeating because we hope for one day that we don't have to say this anymore. But until then, we repeat these certain mistakes. So that gives you a good idea also on what we're looking into or what sort of things to pay attention when building the report. All right, enough about that. Let's go into the reports. So the first top 5 report that has gotten here, and the one that we're going to be reviewing, is coming from Odunlami Zainab. So Odunlami, congratulations. Let's take a closer look at the report and see what's happening here. So the first impression, right, when you open it up, is that it's not too overcrowded. The colors are not too saturated, so it kind of feels a little bit light. But there are certain things that, and that's my personal opinion, that I'm not a fan of. The Sparklines idea is good, but just highlighting the min max points on every single one of them, maybe it doesn't give me the highest value because I can theoretically kind of see it. But the other thing that you always have to be very cautious about is the cross chart interactions. So, for example, in this case, since I have these sparklines, they don't really have any additional layer on the x axis. So, on the very first glance, I don't know necessarily that that is the timeline, or maybe it's product categories, or what is it that's on the x-axis. Some sort of indication would be nice. And the other thing is, since I already know that this is a timeline, and we also have a timeline here, the tricky part is try to eliminate scenarios where I can do this, where I can select a single month. The KPI revenues are showcasing only that month. That's fine. But now the sparkline is completely gone, and I just have a green dot. Right? From a visual perspective, it kind of breaks the immersion. So what you would want to do is maybe try to somehow highlight the selected month or something like that, or just disable the cross chart interactions between these certain instances. Because leaving me with just a red or green dot isn't really going to help me, right? You somehow still want to showcase to me what it's intended to showcase, and that was that actual trend of the timeline. So that's just one of the things. Now, a couple of things that I do like about it is that there are these field parameter switches that allows me to quickly switch between different metrics. I always love when people do this because it just allows you to save a little bit more space, so you don't have to create separate pages with exactly the same layout just for three different metrics, right? But there is one thing that I noticed that I can actually do, which you may basically have to make sure that you don't allow your users to do, and that is this. If I have something selected, you cannot allow me to click on it once more to deselect it, right? And that is one thing you got to be careful about. The reason for this is because if I start to move between the different pages, like for example here, you can see nothing is selected. So my question is, what am I currently looking at? So whenever you're creating a slicer, you have to enable that option of single select, and that forces a single selection to always be applicable or actually activated, basically. So it's a small little thing, but it does make a lot of difference, right? Now, what else do we have here? The timeline showcasing the previous and current year. That is fine. Well, basically 2025. Now we're 2026, but you get the idea, right? The current month and the comparison month. And the other thing that I'm always doing is whenever I see over a year, for those who have been here before, oh, you know how much I love to break these, right? So what I did, of course, is I tried to understand what's happening here. So what I'm going to go with is, for example, let's say even revenue. Let's keep it on revenue, right? We can see that the blue marker or light purple is the 2024 and the gray one is the 2025. And this showcases me year over year comparison. So here I can clearly see that previous year's results were better than this year. So I would expect this to turn red and to showcase to me how much are we actually percentage wise losing money or how much it has fallen since last year. But if I select it, you can see that what's happening here is I think you didn't finish the formula. And essentially, it's not an increase of 98%. It's actually the fulfillment is 98%. So I'm 2% away from the original sort of set value. So if the calculation would be completed, I should see basically a 2% decrease in value. That's what I would be trying to see here. The reason why I noticed this is because I was just playing around with different months and trying to see how things are going to be cross filtered and everything, right? Is if I select a case where 2025 is higher than 2024, everything's green, fine, I accept it. But if the case is reversed, I don't expect to see green here, right? You kind of expect to see the reverse. I'm trying to understand where the loss is coming from. So that's just one thing to kind of pay attention to. Make sure that the values, the numbers that you're showcasing tell the full story. This isn't really a year over year comparison, it's a fulfillment comparison. Not even comparison, just fulfillment. How much I've met the actual previous value. Uh, as far as the other visuals go, the donut chart, I like that you added a little bit of a background just to kind of spice it up a bit, right? The KPI in the middle, love it. The calculations are showcasing, the drill downs get taken into account, everything. But when it comes to these three graphics, there's one thing that I noticed. They're all talking about geography. And if you're talking about the same dimension on multiple visuals, it's usually recommended to try to create some sort of a hierarchy, which in this case I feel is kind of broken. The typical way on how we read information is from left to right. Even though this is a separate block and these are two separate blocks, my intuitive action is go from here to here to here to here, right? But if we look at the actual drill down levels, I have countries and I have regions. By selecting any of these countries, I'm basically making this chart to become semi obsolete and just leave me with one massive block. So, what I would recommend is just switch them around or switch around the hierarchy levels because you don't want to create a scenario where these columns are just left alone. I would much rather have first the big regions that cross filters the donut chart. Then I can choose the region of the sort of country region, look at the map, and go from higher to lower. So it's just one thing to kind of pay attention to. The performance page, very simple made. I like it. Simplicity is sometimes the king, trust me. The top and bottom approaches, tricky, primarily because right now without having some sort of a highlight, I don't know which one is being showcased straight away. I can play around and understand which one is which, but I don't know which one is currently being showcased, right? So it's one of those things. Um, Switches, that's fine. Profitability, again, a little bit of color, doesn't mean anything bad. Here, the only thing that threw me off for a little bit, and I kind of stayed there for a second and tried to understand what am I even seeing, is you can see that you have inverted the axis. So typically, we all know x and y coordinates, right? Upwards is positive, to the right is positive. Everything to the left and bottom is negative. Here we have an inverted approach. So when I was looking at the values, I was very kind of caught off guard when I noticed that actually going upwards means going into the negatives. So it threw me a little bit off. Yeah, that was that. For the table, I'm usually against data bars, but I kind of like it here because one thing that allows you to notice here is if I try to focus on one or the other, what it kind of shows or indicates to me is that not always the highest seller is the one that's giving me the most profit and vice versa. The one that's giving me highest profit doesn't necessarily mean that it's the highest seller. Yeah, I don't know. Una, anything else about this report that you maybe noticed?
Yeah, the one thing I really like that the participant here tried to add this additional context to the data with the thresholds in I
Hmm.
think in the most of the charts where it's appropriate. Uh, I wouldn't probably go with simple averages because when it's come to sales, usually the target is something much more valuable to have as a reference value. But either way, I think it was a great effort to have that in the chart and bring it this additional context. So really great job doing that. The only thing where it's not working, I would say, is the scatter chart on the third page. I think it was
Hmm.
right. Yeah, because the axes are turned off and it kind of creates a wrong impression where the 0 point is.
Yeah, zero
So yeah, you
points here.
mentioned that there is like sort of the negative values are reversed, but then yeah, the axes are missing, and then the thresholds are kind of creating this axis effect. So yeah, I wouldn't probably choose to do it this way. Yeah, other than that, of course, there are like always there are a couple of things that I would get. I guess probably comes with experience, and that is sort of all the ways how the buttons work and where they are positioned. For example, like reset and help, I wouldn't put them so much in the same
Yeah,
style as the menu is because it's just a bit hard to locate. It took me a while to understand whether there's a reset option in the chart, for example. Yeah, and I think in this report we had a dark and white theme as well, which
yep,
was a great touch. Um, yeah, the only thing that wasn't sort of polished is how this button works on hovers. If you hover over, you'll see it kind of flickers back and forth to different states. So that's just one thing to take into consideration next time. But other than that, yeah, I think it was a very great report.
yeah, definitely. Good job and congratulations in getting the top five. Now let's move on to the next one. So the other report that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Akhilesh Road. So Akhilesh, congratulations. Now let's open it up and take a closer look. This one, Una, I'm gonna give the floor to you.
Okay. So yeah, I really like this report. Again, well, usually the top five reports are well designed, and this is not an exception. I think it's very easy in the eyes. The color scheme is well balanced. Um, yeah, the main KPIs are here. It's not overcrowded. There are like 2 pages with the most important information, and that's yeah, that's always nice to have. Not to overcrowd this with information. I see that there has been a lot of work dedicated to the buttons and how they look and behave. Um, if you notice this sort of the title button, I guess you see that there is a very nice animation around it. So yeah, I would say kudos to the Akhilesh for taking time and just working with the animations and experimenting with this. Also, the follow button, if you hover over this, I can see there has been a lot of work involved into the buttons. So yeah, it really pays off usually. The only thing that kind of throws me off a bit, they're not polished perfectly. There are sort of like small things that when the button moves, it gets cut off on the top. So that's kind of a small thing that I would look for. Yeah, but it's great to see that participants are experimenting with all types of elements and possibilities in the Power BI. Uh, let's go to the next page, I guess,
Yep.
first. Yeah, the product. Yeah, there was another thing that I really liked in this report, and that was images for the products. It really kind of helped to understand, okay, what is the product that we're actually talking about. The product codes or the names, especially in the pharma industry, that doesn't always represent what it is. So this was a really nice touch. Kind of understand, okay, what is the product I'm looking at, how it is performing in different regions and sales wise and stuff like that. So that was a nice touch, definitely. um yeah, the one thing that threw me off in this report, if you go to the first page again,
Hmm.
um again, the time. So this is the one thing you like to break, right?
Oh yeah.
the way the way time selection works. And I completely understand it takes a lot of effort to try and figure out all the scenarios when the time intelligence is involved in this. But the one thing that's kind of not working is that you have these year selectors at the top of the page. Yeah, so if you select sort of the 1 year 2024, it kind of works nicely with the charts on the left side. But then the middle part, the timeline, our timeline, the Zoom chart timeline, it's not filtered out. The same goes with the 2005 year. Sort of if you
Hmm.
switch, again, it's not filtered out. But now if you try to filter out a year, it kind of breaks. And it just because, the logic is not there fully when, when this is built. So I would probably try to approach this in a way that either maybe nothing is selected at first, and then if you select, then everything is then filtered out specifically for that year, to avoid these breaking points. Yeah, but this was, I guess, the main thing that
Hmm.
I noticed that I would improve upon. The other thing that took me a while to understand how it works are those sort of KPI cards on the left side. Again, there's like a KPI and then the chart. And it took me a while to understand that it's like a one element together and not like two separate ones. And that you can click on each of those. Yeah, I would probably not use so much space for these sort of supportive small charts in the KPIs, just to make it a bit more understandable for users. Yeah, but other than that, again, another one of the great charts and reports we have. Yeah, any comments from your side, Iris?
I was kind of close to what you were saying with the KPI cards, right? I love that they are field parameters. I know it's a good approach and how to kind of save space, but I've always said also be very careful with this because without the info overlay or without explaining to the users, this is how I went through it, right? I saw a timeline, so naturally I like to break them. So what I did is I didn't even notice that it's a field parameter initially because I was focusing on the charts. So when I clicked on it, I noticed that something suddenly changed, and then I realized that these are field parameters. So it's sort of one of those things that it works great if people know about it. It might cause a lot of confusion if you don't know what it is, right? But the execution, I like it very much. What you already mentioned, be very careful with if you have external slicers and if you have a timeline, be just very careful because essentially, for those of you who don't understand maybe initially what's happening here is I'm passing a filter for 2025, but this slicer is not affecting the timeline, right? The interaction has been disabled. So if I create a selection from the timeline, it essentially creates a conflict. It's saying, hey, I want to filter June 2024, but then also filter 2025. So it's a conflict of filters, and that's why everything else kind of breaks. So that's why you have to be careful with this sort of execution. But it doesn't mean that it's bad or anything. It's just something to pay attention to. For the donut charts, I like it, the little touches, right? I feel that what we did with the detail labels, I know it's a very simple thing, but I think it gives it a little bit more visual appeal, right? With a little bit of a background, depending on the colors and everything, so it just fits nicely in. As far as everything else, kudos on the buttons. I really like the execution. I can see you spend a lot of time on that, and yeah, the rest of it, just good overall report, I'd say. It's a clean, simple report that does its job. So yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations on getting into the top five. So let's go on to the next one. The third report that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Kapila. I'm sorry about the last name if I butcher it. Karunakaram, but I tried. Let's open it up and take a closer look at it. Now, for this one, there's one thing that stood out mostly when I first opened it up. And that is the only reason why I noticed this is because I've had so much complaints from the design team when I started to work with the layouts and everything as well. Everything has to be consistent, right? The spacings, the color templates, the whole idea has to be very similar or trying to be represented in the same way. And what I'm talking about is right here. If I, for example, by default, it's total revenue, I already had it switched. You can see, for example, total revenue page right now, or KPI card, is purple with black characters. However, the switch is the same font color, not font color, but background color is this, but the font color is white. So it's a very minor detail, but because of how many mistakes I made with this, I noticed this now very quickly. So it's sort of the principle is you try to keep things consistent. If you have the purple color as a background, you try to keep the letters always the same color. Because the white can work, right? For example, when you have black and white, it works good. There's enough contrast, you can read it, that's completely fine. Similar to how I would probably also disable the backgrounds here and also for the donut chart here. I know I just said that I like them, but I think that disabling the backgrounds for these things would just make it feel cleaner, more styled off, more polished. So that's it's a simple thing, but it's just one of the things that I noticed straight away. One thing that I would love, I know it would be a lot trickier, but if I'm switching between these KPIs, I would love it to also highlight the KPI card that I'm referencing right now. It's a nice little touch, but I would really love to see that. Other than that, I think the layout is good, but the other thing that I noticed here is you have prepared a background and you have imported it into the page, right? It's not something you built in Power BI. But what happened with that is that I don't know for what reason, but you're not utilizing the full space of the block that you assigned for the visual, which makes me feel like there's something kind of missing or isn't fully developed, right? There's a lot of white space. I know it's not white in this case, but you know what I mean, guys. Right? There's just a lot of space between the elements. So I would just try to utilize more space so it's more consistent. And the one thing that I noticed here is I can tell you straight away, it's a nice little workaround that you did there, but because I know our charts, I know how to break it very quickly. What has been done here is there are two different charts actually here. One of the charts has been utilized to create the actual chart, and the other one has been created purely for labels. But the problem with this is that right now it seems to be fine. But as soon as I select one of the categories, so for example, if I select the top one prescription, the other chart takes again the all available space and it centers the label. So it kind of feels like something broke here. right? So be very careful when you're trying to combine multiple charts. That's usually one of the pitfalls of what you're when you're doing this. So always play around with these combinations. But I like the workaround. So kudos for effort there, definitely. If we go to geography, here the one thing that I want to point out is overall the layout is a lot more nicer for me, for example, here, because everything seems to be mostly using the space besides this little table. So I would probably move these maybe around and extend the visual just to kind of fill in the space. But the one thing that I noticed here is that this is a native visual, so it uses the default Power BI tooltip. Fine. Then I, for example, hover over this one, which uses our custom tooltip, which utilizes dark theme. So the inconsistency in tooltips again is one of the things that kind of happens, and it might be very difficult for the end user to again understand if everything is done correctly. Maybe I did something wrong. Why is this specific way? So you try to eliminate those questions, right? So I would just make sure that because you can activate regular tooltips also on our visuals, so that's not an issue. If you wanted to keep it this way, then just make all of them the same principle, so it's easier to follow through. If you go to the product page, similar here, we have native tooltip, we have our custom tooltip, which is on light mode, and we have the dark mode tooltip, like three different tooltip types. And the other thing that I noticed here is if you're doing conditional formatting in any of your reports, color things exactly the same. Because we can see that, for example, this red and this green isn't the same red and green that's utilized here. Again, a very minor detail, but these details do matter because it creates the overall sort of feeling of the report, the visual standard for it. So yeah, I'd say there's a lot of minor things. There's not like a major breaking point for it. All of the reports that are in the top five, there's a lot of minor things that you might have done, guys, a little bit better. But that's what it's all about. Una, any comments from your side?
I can probably just add, again, as you said, just a minor thing, but the design team also trained me. And the way, well, the placement of the, information overlays and the reset buttons, um, it's always something that's, I would say there is the place where user is usually looking for them. And in this case, it's good that they're not styled the same as the menu items, but
Hmm.
I would still would like either some more space or some kind of divider there. So it's kind of clear, okay, this is a new section. Those are the items there that are different than the navigation, or even better, just put them on the somewhere on the top, on the left or the right corner, because that's where usually these kind of UX UI things are placed.
Yeah. And when you started to talk about it, I remembered one more thing. It's a very annoying thing, especially if you work with dark theme reports, and that is the visual headers. So visual headers are these little things that you can see popping off right now when I'm hovering over cards. And the only reason why it's annoying is because when you're working with dark theme, the default color is this light gray, right? So you can immediately see these things popping off. You see these little squares right here. Usually you have also like drill down buttons there if it's available and that sort of thing. So if it's a dark theme and if you don't need it, just disable visual headers so you don't have these things just popping off from time to time. On lighter reports, the reason why it's usually forgotten about is even if we go, for example, to this report and put it on light theme, go back to the main where we had the cards, you can see we still have them, but because the background is light, we don't see them as much. But because this report is with a dark background, you can see them just popping off. And knowing from our experience, some people are not going to say anything, but there's going to be somebody who's going to be like, can we get just rid of these things? Because it's just annoying to see them. So, again, minor thing, but has a major impact on the report. Overall, good report. Definitely congratulations on getting into the top five. All right, let's move on to the next one. So, the next report that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Eniola. So, Eniola, congratulations. Not the first time we've seen you here, so good to see you back. This one, Una, I'm going to give to you.
Yeah, and just before I dig into comments for the report itself, I just noted this is another sort of blue uh, report, I would say, blue color scheme. And I just kind of remembered, we usually have these, challenges where the team is very, very related to some kind of color, like Christmas. Like now, for Christmas, there's always red or green reports, or I don't know, we had some other topics like that. And then somehow I just noticed that for the pharma, there has been a lot of blue reports. So I guess that's like of the color for you guys. So when you think about pharmacies, this is where you go. Just a fun fact. But yeah, about the report again, another one which is very well executed. I mean the color scheme is very harmonious. The layout is very well laid out, and those things themselves are very hard to achieve. So really great job on that. Um, what else? Let me just think a bit and see my notes. There was one thing I wanted to emphasize. Yeah, so I have, you can see right away that there has been a lot of time invested in different calculations just to show all these comparisons with previous years, not in just KPI cards, but also on the charts and, what's the increase and stuff like that. So I really appreciate that. It gives, again, this additional context to the data. So, uh, again, a time consuming thing to do, but it adds a great value to the report. There were a couple of things that, from the data visualization perspective, that kind of made me think a bit. So, for example, the colors, the color coding. The participant here is kind of using conditional formatting, I would say, highlighting the highest and the lowest value. And it would be fine probably in kind of different context, but in here, because you have this middle chart store analysis by size, I guess, L and S, and because it kind of matches the number of colors, three, it kind of impacts the way how I interpret the whole chart and the whole color scheme. So for me personally, because of this chart, I always kind of look back of it and try to interpret color the way the category is named. So for example, the M, so the blue for me is always M size, right? And the red one is S. Even it's not the intention here, and understand what the user was going for. It still kind of creates this confusion. Probably, if you had another chart with more categories, it wouldn't create that effect. But because you have this one chart that kind of misleadingly interpret three colors, right? You get this effect that specific color means something else. Uh, but again, in different contexts, it probably wouldn't be so. Another thing I wanted to mention is this top N, which is a great feature to have now to allow the user to decide how many slices in the chart you want to see. The problem is that, for example, if you change it to 10, as a user here, I would really expect to now see the 10 categories in the chart. But Eniola have decided to use also the other other slice functionality, which kind of groups the rest of the 10 together, which is not what I would expect as a user. If you have this top end functionality already defining how many slices to show, then that's the number of slices I would expect to see here. So either I would suggest either use this other functionality and allow the user to explore the next categories, or use this top end, but probably don't combine in this situation. Okay, we could probably go to the sales volume here because there was another thing I noticed, and that was regarding the scatter chart. Yeah, so What Eniola has tried to do here is show the correlation between price and quantity. But there is one data error that has been made, and that is that the prices for up instead of using the average. And that kind of, there are always some data that, in this case, price is one of those. The average should be the measure that should be used here. And the other thing that could make this chart better is to add additional drill down levels. So you kind of you see the big categories, but once you would drill down, you would see the data for specific product groups. So that would really elevate the chart to the next level, because right now it just, yeah, it's not completely correct in terms of data interpretation. Yeah. Ivis, is there something you want to add here?
Uh, for me, there was one thing that I noticed only later on when I started to play with this a bit more, and that is that there's field parameters. There's filter panel, sorry, yeah, filter panel, which is great. But at the same time, you have slicers which affect specific dimensions. And then in the middle of everything, you also add the metric selector, which is a field parameter that switches how almost every single chart behaves now because it's a different value that it's showcasing. So if you have a field parameter, try to incorporate it somewhere where it's a lot more visible because it's one of the main things you want to switch around. Or if you're putting it in the filter panel, try to make sure that it's somehow visually distinguished as something different because it's not just yet another slicer to kind of limit the data, it's the value that I'm switching between. So that's one part. And because of the filter panel, also the other thing that Una mentioned also for the previous report is you kind of try to look for things to be in similar places. For example, reset, right? So like Una mentioned, top right or top left, doesn't matter where you put it, but have it available somewhere. On the top right, we don't really have anything, but if I go to the filter panel, I can open it and then I can reset the slicers. So it feels like there's unnecessary steps for me just to clear everything. I would make it available for the user straight away somewhere with just a single click so I can start all over and do some different analysis. I don't mind how you've done it. I just think that there are better ways on how this could be done. That's one thing. The color, definitely, if you trust me, you're not the only one who has come across this issue. We also sometimes struggle with trying to figure out what's the best approach here, how to give it to the user so it's understandable. Because what happens is here, the store size kind of feels like a legend. On sales volume, however, now the pharmacy type feels like a legend because there's also three of them, three different colors, right? So it creates an unnecessary connection between different things. Um, for this chart that we have in the profitability and sales, my recommendation is if you're going with lines, be very careful on how you do them because I think the idea is there, but the current execution makes it feel that this chart just has a lot happening, right? I have to spend a lot of time to properly read it and tell you what exactly belongs to what it's showcasing, and these sort of things. So I would probably go with maybe a single line or even just columns and then a reference line on top of it, something that's more typical. So I would do probably something like that. That's one thing. The other thing is I'm gonna compare to 2025 and go to sales volume. And this is just a very minor thing, right? But because I've done so many of these challenges, I start to notice things that I'm not proud of. And that is right here. In the quantity sold KPI card, the comparison is chef's kiss. It looks good. But what is the dollar sign doing there? We're talking about quantity sold. It's a very minor detail, right? But just always check your numbers, always check the calculations. I know we love to reuse them, right? Because, hey, it saves time. But just pay attention to the formatting on how it specifically is created. Other than that, I really like the report. The only thing that I would have about it is the colors in specific use cases. Also for the map, maybe the center, like everything feels too close to each other. So I would play around with this a bit more. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very good report. Well done, and definitely kudos for all the work you put into it.
Yeah, I
So
can see that there has been a lot of hours involved to polish this, right? Just a small tweaks for the charts themselves to make the data more understandable. But yeah, great
yeah,
job.
absolutely. And what I like seeing here is that you're trying out different things, like the top end filter, right? To kind of try to limit these sort of approaches. You're trying different labels, how they're sort of creating the different dynamics, different chart types, and everything. So yeah, great job, definitely. All right, I think it's time to go to the final top five submission, right? So let's go to the final top five report, and that is going to come from Okay, don't know if awesome. So okay, congratulations. Let's open up the report and take a closer look at it. So, for this one, I definitely like that it feels very polished straight away in a sense that you kind of have a separate block for everything. But the only thing from my experience that I can straight away tell you is that this block right here, there's going to be comments that it feels a little bit overcrowded. Like there's just a bunch of different text with different sizings, different colors, and everything, like trying to put too much information on it. That's a minor thing, so don't worry about it. What else? When I started to look at the report, I noticed that there is going to be some sort of a comparison, but I don't see it straight away. So I started to look and see, okay, maybe there's a timeline. Okay, there's a timeline here. Okay, there's a donut chart analysis, and here you're telling me select a single month to view performance insights, which is great. You're giving me a guided tour as a hint, basically, straight away, right? But my only pet peeve here is why didn't you leave the chart on a monthly level so I can just straight away click on a month and see the beautiful comparison? Since you left it on quarters, I need to drill down into a quarter and then select a month. Like you're creating one unnecessary click. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it does matter. So I would probably start off with a monthly view, allow the user still to zoom out, go to quarters, and so forth. But the entry point is the point where I want you to do the action, right? Make it as simple and streamlined as possible. Because again, simple click gives me the comparison. Very good. I like it. What else? Different, yeah, increases, decreases, and so forth. So that's good. Uh, One thing that I noticed here when I started to play around with is select a business KPI. That's a field parameter again. It's a good thing you guys are using those. Get used to them. But if I'm switching around with them, you can see that this affects almost every single chart because there are different metrics, but it doesn't affect the table here. So what I probably would have done, and also when I'm switching just around like this, you can see that straight away, for example, this is not affected, the profit margin is not affected. So it feels like by doing this, I'm not affecting this part and this part. So what I would have done, I think, right? I don't know if I would have done it straight away, but that's my first thought process. I would have combined these together so that it feels like that's a block that isn't directly controlled by the business KPI switcher. So I can kind of feel that this is the dynamic part, this is the static part, semi-static, right? It does still showcase the results because if I choose a month, what this table actually gives you, it's a quarter, sorry, I'll take a month. Yeah, there we go. So what this table actually gives you is the full list of all these KPIs and their actual KPI, previous month, showcasing which is the month and the value, delta, and the actual comparison, right? So it's valuable information. But until I get to this point where I selected it, I feel like this is not doing anything. So I would move it together with this because here was the part where you told me to select the month, right? And that kind of triggers a lot of the dynamic parts here. But overall, really like how you executed here. If you go to health and target, a lot of different approaches. Here, the only thing that I really spend a bit of time on is this part right here. and I'll explain why. Gauge charts are good for specific use cases. All charts are great for specific use cases, right? But with gauges, it's one of those charts where you have to be even more specific or even more cautious. Because what you can see here is there's no highlighting, for example, that this is the actual value where it ends. This is some sort of a benchmark and whether I met it or not. I just see that one gauge is purple, one gauge is green, no reference, no idea. Okay, seems like I'm doing okay because sales achievement is 96%. Then I start to go into minor details. Pharmacies meeting sales targets, 61 pharmacy out of 120. So basically, what you're telling me is that 61 pharmacy is carrying those other 59, right? It's getting to the 96th percentile. So we're almost getting to the overall sales target with only 60 of those. The rest of them are underperforming, and these are overperforming drastically. So when I saw this part, I was like, cool, I'm going to see which one of these is actually overperforming. But the way and how you made these calculations is you limited it to 100. I understand why you did it, because what you're trying to do is kind of showcase to me which met the target and that's it. But because of how this information is placed together, I wanted to see which pharmacies are the overperformers. So for example, if we go to Italy, you can see that is the reference line. 89,000 has been the total sales target is 87. It's not 100%, it's 100 plus percent, right? So I want to see which of those pharmacies are the ones that are overperforming and which ones I should send some additional bonuses to, right? Because they're essentially carrying everyone else. So from an analysis perspective, that would be a good approach there. Um, Product mix, again, conditional formatting, a lot of dynamic parts. Overall, I really like how you lay this out. And the table at the end, I'm usually not a big fan of it, but I'm not against this one. I don't know. It feels kind of understandable. Shows you two primary metrics, that is the sales achievement, profit achievement, overall margin, and the status count categorization. So have nothing against it. I don't know, Una, any other comments from your side?
Yeah, if you go to the first page, yeah, you're already
Yep.
there.
Hmm.
Uh, the one thing that seemed a bit confusing to me was the donut and the KPI cards next to it. They're
Hmm.
basically duplicating the same information. So, for example, in our donut chart, you actually can in the legend you can add all the values in there, right? The percentage and the total cost and stuff like that, and then you have KPI card to show, for example, profit margin. So I don't really see the reason for having those there. I mean, either KPI cards or the donut. Otherwise, you're just duplicating information.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the one thing I noticed. And the other thing, and again, this is sort of just specific to this data set and this theme of the challenge. But because we are talking about pharmacies, right? The health as a name just makes you think about actual human health, right? Not the financial health. So I would probably avoid using the name health in the title just because it's a bit misleading in this specific context. But yeah, that's very specific thing. I mean, in any other report where you look at the financial data or the sales, the health or financial health would make perfect sense. But here, since it's pharmacy and health, those kind of create a mixed message, I guess, for yeah, for what's under that specific section. Yeah, but other than that, yeah, you mentioned the gauges, and yeah, that was again also quite confusing to me to understand what exactly is shown there. I would probably choose to have like the total sales that you have for this pharmacy as a max for the gauge, and then have the target, whatever it was, and then you would be able to actually show that the target was met and it was even overachieved, right? Um, yeah. Other than that, nothing else to add here.
All right. Well, I guess we can. we went through the top five, so it means that we can quickly hide the screen. So I can open up the winner and we can announce the winner, right? Just gotta make sure the screen is hidden before I start moving around and looking for the right one. Just double checking. Uh-huh. Okay, that's the winner. That's the report. Yeah, okay. I think we can push it back live. So the winner for this challenge is, hey, Odunlami. Congratulations. Overall, from the judges' valuations
Congratulations.
and everything, you have won the challenge. So kudos to you. Every other report that was in the top five, like we said, they are very great reports. They're just these minor little different things that would make them even better. For those of you who didn't get into the top five, it doesn't mean necessarily that your report was bad or anything like that, right? It's just that these fives were valued the highest. So don't worry, participate in the next one. Try to get it even better. And don't forget that the feedback that we send you, there's a reason why we mention those things to you, right? Those are things that we are looking from the judging criteria perspective. So pay attention to the feedback, improve your reports, and definitely go forward. There's actually two more honorable mentions that we had from the judges, and that is one of them is for Jude Ono. So, Jude, congratulations on getting in the honorable mention. And the honorable mention was for this chart specifically, the time variance and the actual difference showcasing. It's a very nice way on how to showcase that there's an increase or a decrease and how far is the actual disparity from it. So it's a very nice touch there. And then we had another honorable mention, which is, I might have accidentally closed it. So just bear with me for a second. It's this one. It happens, right? I'm also a human. I also sometimes close things. So, Ankan, congratulations also to you. And in your case, the honorable mention was because of the way and how you style the KPI cards. So, for those of you who are following LinkedIn, Power BI, different news, you've seen this trick already, but just the capability of kind of turning the card around and having some insights within the card is a very nice touch. So, yeah, those two honorable mentions from the judges. Um, Special thanks also again to Una for joining us today. Special thanks to the rest of the team for making all of this happen. And for you guys, don't be afraid to participate. Even if this is your first time, even if you're learning Power BI, you can still learn something new. The challenges are created in a way that they provide enough data already straight away so you don't have to create very complex models to create basic reports, start to learn Power BI, and just go with it, right? So congratulations for those of you who participated. Hope it was interesting and insightful. Yeah, I don't know. Una, any last words from your side?
Um, Nothing much except great job, everyone. Yeah, I think it was a very close challenge. You know, those reports really just minor details that separated each of those. So good job to yeah, good job everyone. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. Uh, if not, well, thank you. And yeah, I will wait to see what has been submitted for the next challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, seems like there is no questions. It's your loss, guys. Right? We're not gonna be here for always. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us today. I hope it was interesting and you managed to take away something from this session. And we'll see you in the next challenges and next webinars. So have an amazing rest of the day. Bye.
Bye.